Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Excited to be here again and do some coaching. We're going to hit some awesome questions that came in, and hopefully you have some other questions. This is a chance for you to get in what we call the throne of awesomeness, where you get it's your chance to get specific, customized coaching for something you want to work on. Where you want to level up or improve or some challenge you're facing. It's all good. It's good. Isn't life awesome? Just pause for life is awesome. I know, I love it because it's so good. But I remember struggling with that a lot, where I would get discouraged so much, and life was, especially if it was challenging. I remember thinking that life wasn't good for some reason if it was challenging. Like if we were facing some kind of obstacle or struggle or times were tough, then somehow life wasn't good. And I had to switch that right in my head and be like, wait a minute, a challenge or a struggle or some kind of conflict, it doesn't mean life's not good. It's like, it's this calling for me to level up, to improve, to grow. So every opportunity we get, whether it's in marriage or in money, or whether it's with health and fitness or your faith, every one of those things is a chance. It's this calling, it's this beckoning of like, hey, here's a chance to refine and grow and become more developed. And often, if I can just really drive this home, often we're having a struggle or trouble because we have reached the limits of our current skill set. Right? Let that sink in. Anytime you're bumping up against something and it's difficult for you, or you feel stuck or trapped, or you're having a hard time getting different results, it's so often because you've reached the limit of your current skill set. So it's not that life isn't good, life's fantastic. Right? Well, life is what you make of it. It could be miserable if you make it miserable. But it can be really fantastic, even perhaps especially when you're facing some challenges and struggles, because it's your chance to life saying, hey, here's a chance to really level things up. Well, right? And really get some good results.
Right. And I'm remembering this image of this cycle. And it's kind of like you go through life and you face these obstacles. Maybe it feels like a wall standing in your way. And it is that wall, this challenge is actually an opportunity. And I remember too, having that mind shift on that, oh, this is an opportunity. Oh, I'm being challenged right now. It's an opportunity, and thinking about it in a new way, because you can take that opportunity and it does literally level you up. So what is the wall actually becomes a step. And so then you now step up higher and you're living at a higher level. Or a lot of people will also instead hit that wall and then they just cycle back. And they go in this cycle of like moving forward, hitting the wall and going back, and moving forward and hitting the wall and coming back. And so they never actually level up. They just go around and around, experiencing the same challenges again and again and again. But when you see it as an opportunity, that's when you gain the power of actually using it to leverage you into a higher way of living. Yeah.
That's worth emphasizing and re-emphasizing. If you seem to be bumping up against the same problem pretty regularly or even chronically, you're missing this chance to move past it, because once you outgrow it, that kind of problem is never a problem again.
It like goes away.
It's done. It's in the past. You're like, yeah, I used to struggle with that, but and I know this sounds crazy to say things like that when you feel stuck. You're like, what? Like I could move past that and never deal with it again? And yes, emphatic yes. We've experienced that ourselves, and we've helped lots of clients do that. You just kind of outgrow those problems. I love the word transcend. You transcend them. Like you rise above them. You outgrow them. And so it's like, yeah, I don't deal with that anymore because I outgrew it.
And not that I like how you're saying you outgrew that problem, because you never outgrow problems.
Right.
There will always be problems and challenges to solve, because that is how we grow. So you can outgrow a certain problem, but there will always be another one. And usually it's a bigger one, more challenging one.
Because you're leveling
But
up.
that's how you grow. That's actually how it works.
I remember somebody saying something similar to that to me years ago. And I was like, yeah, I wonder if I really want to grow, because I don't want bigger problems. I hate my problems now. Is life nothing but problems? This is terrible. But when you grow, you're like, yeah, cool, bring on the challenge, bring on the adventure. This is what makes us great. This is what your opportunity, your privilege to become your very best self is via the path of your problems. How cool is that?
The obstacle is the way. That's why I love that book by Ryan Holiday. The obstacle is the way. The obstacle standing in your path is the way to what you want to achieve, to whatever you dream of having. Whatever's standing in your way is how you get to that. And that seems so like that doesn't make sense, but it does. It is what gets you to where you want to go.
The impediment is the way.
Okay, that was a nice.
So, wow. Okay, I could just keep going and going and going on that.
Oh, okay.
Woo, I love it. But we'll dive in. Okay, let's do some coaching. Ready?
Should we start with this question?
Sure. And if you've got other questions, you can throw them in the chat. And if you want it to be anonymous, you can send it private. If you don't care, and you're just like, hey, this is my thing. What do you think? Throw it in there, and then we can hit some specific issues, or we can hit some general topics. I know a bunch of you weren't able to make this live, and I hope you're enjoying the recording. But we're going to try to hit some things. And again, when we do specific coaching, all of you might not have the same exact problem, but don't disengage. Don't just check out because you're like, oh, that's not me. Like, see what you can learn, the principles and practices you can learn from somebody else's specific challenge that will apply to areas and circumstances in your life as well.
And I want to mention this thing first, because Greg and I were talking about it. I know sometimes it feels like you guys have a question, or someone has this question, and we go off on these really long explanations. And that's for a reason. Like, that's on purpose. We're not doing that just because we're rambling. We're doing that because there's no way that the questions you have and the challenges you're facing can be answered with a 30-second Instagram reel. Like, you cannot find answers to the complex questions of life in less than 5 minutes.
On Twitter.
Well, definitely not on Twitter, but even in like a 5-minute explanation. The reality is, life is so complex. Parenting is so complex. Marriage is so complex. Everything we do has so many layers of complexity. You have to give long answers. That's the only way it can actually be of value, because there's so many perspectives and angles and considerations that need to be taken into consideration, that we have, we feel like it's a moral obligation that we have to point out, okay, it could be this, could be this, could be here. That's why our answers are long. But
I came across the perfect example this morning. Oh, good. They're like, we love the long explanation.
okay.
And we do too. As learners, Rachel and I are like, oh yeah, go deep, like go long on this one, because it's so complex. The perfect example I heard when I was out, so I was out running this morning. You guys, I finished 2 books this morning. I've been working on them, and I happened to finish. They both were close to the end, and so I finished one, and then I finished the other one during my workout, and they were both excellent books. Actually, I'll share, because somebody will ask if I don't share. It was 13 Things That Mentally Strong People Don't Do by Amy Moran. It's really, really excellent book. And the other one was Jordan Peterson's new book, Beyond Order. Both excellent, both a lot of psychology. But in one of them, she just happens to mention in passing children and their tantrums. And people are always like, well, how do I stop my kids from throwing a tantrum? and they want, a 3 to 5 minute answer or less, like, oh, that's easy, just do this.
Just do timeout.
No, man, like that's such a complex thing. Like you got to go way back upstream, like Rachel, I like to describe it. Like you got to way back upstream to see like what's causing the tantrum. And tantrums are the effect of a lot of conditioning
And
stacking,
emotional,
and disconnect and insecurity and parenting. Like there's so much there. So that's like, if somebody came to me like, hey, look, I really want your help to stop my kids with tantrums. I'm like, hey, it's going to be a few hours of coaching. We're going to address the whole thing, and then tantrums go away. So back to what we were talking about earlier, once you outgrow it, they go away. Like our children don't have tantrums. We haven't had a kid. We have 7 kids, and we haven't had a kid throw a tantrum for
10,
15 years. Yeah, awesome. No tantrums. Right. And so but it's a fundamental
even teenage
thing.
tantrum.
No teenage tantrum. Incredible.
Because that's a thing.
Right. That's a thing. Toddlers and teens.
I've heard.
Yeah. But so it's complex. Okay, so let's dive into some questions.
So we received this great question. How do you help a child give up good things because they are overwhelmed and not doing the best things? I find it's very easy to help my children know why they shouldn't do things that waste their time and aren't fulfilling. It's much harder to influence them to give up the things they love and that are good and productive because they do too much. Here's an example. My almost 17-year-old son started raising animals last year. He has some of his own, and he works for 2 other farms. It's been a great experience, and he's learned a lot. He has now got several animals in 3 different locations and is gone from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. almost daily, running around caring for them. He's rarely home for family dinner or devotionals. Wait, I don't know if this is 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. or 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. But anyways, he's rarely home for family dinner or devotional. He's way behind in school. He chose to finish out at the local high school. Church is taking a back seat, and he's running around so fast he's now been in accidents in 2 of our vehicles. Now, no matter how we approach him about giving some of it up, he just ignores us, and it's starting to create some real resentment on both sides, where before we had good relationships. So essentially, how do I help children give up good things to keep room in their lives for the best and most important things? Especially as a teenager, they might not seem more important in the moment than the things they're passionate about and want to spend all their time doing.
Great question. And there's a couple, again, this is very complex. There's a lot here.
It's funny because
this is actually my question.
Perfect.
I didn't want to say that. I was going to let you say that.
Yeah.
It's Laura's question.
Because a lot of times you guys talk about kids who are doing crazy bad things. And I'm like, my kids are doing so many good things. I can't even find them anymore. I'm like,
Yep.
Where are they? They're out doing good things.
Yep. And it's very, very common, right? Especially right now in our society, kids are over busy. So with your son, a lot of it's animals and work and other things. A lot of what we're seeing with other youth is like sports, endless sports, and
in Georgia here
and
it's
classes,
like tons and tons and tons of sports. They're like nonstop.
And it's like there's this social conditioning of like you have to be all in. None of this like you can come to dance classes or you can be on the team. It's like you dedicate your life to it or you're a loser.
Oh yeah, we just told my daughter's coach she's not going to nationals for her tumbling competition. He is freaked out. He's kicked her off some of her nights. Like he's angry.
They get livid, right?
And she's injured. What am I supposed to do?
Well, right.
Anyways, let me get something in the oven, but I'm still listening. You're just going to miss me off the camera for a second.
Okay. They lose perspective quickly. So that's part of the element. So all of you listening, you're going to face this with your kids, where you're trying to find this balance of being too busy or not busy enough. You'll have some kiddos that just, you can't get them off the couch or out of bed. They're just brah. And you'll have others that are go, 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 go all the time. And we got to find this balance. And you and we have to find this balance as well, because some of you are way too busy.
Well, right. That was one idea that came to mind. This isn't necessarily a challenge unique to our children. This is also a challenge we're usually facing as well. I mean, I'm constantly evaluating, am I doing too much? Because the question is, or the answer is often, yes, I'm doing too much. I need to do less. Because for some people, the natural tendency is to do more and more and more until it becomes too much. Now, some people have the other problem. They're not doing enough. They are the ones sitting on the couch and they need to be encouraged to do more. But for those who are ambitious, doing too much easily becomes a common problem, because we just want to say, yeah, to so many things. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'm going to do that too. So that's one side of it, is that this is a challenge that's adult. It's part of adulting.
Yep.
Because you're going to constantly be evaluating. So part of the answer here is having this conversation with him. In some ways, he's 16, almost 17. We have a 16, almost 17-year-old who is actually working on a farm right now in Utah. In some ways, he has to be in charge of this process, because he's getting to that age where he needs to be deciding. He needs to be practicing these adult skills, which is learning how to let go of doing too much. But if you're the one making those decisions, he's going to be resentful about it. He has to make the decision. Now, you can help him through that process and the way you help him through this process, part of it is honestly being okay with whatever he decides and letting him know that. Decide whatever you want. This is you. This is your life. You get to decide what matters to you. You get to decide how you're going to spend your time. But
well, hold on.
I've observed,
Go ahead.
I've observed these things. I've noticed these things. I know that as myself, for myself, I tend to get too many good things going, and I end up doing these things, getting in an accident, messing up here. These things start falling apart. And one of the reasons why is I'm doing too much. So you're essentially walking him through the thinking process so that he can think about it, ponder it, analyze it, and then decide, you know what? Yeah, I am doing too much.
And here's what I was going to say, the most, and you guys, this is true for you, for your spouse, for your children. So everybody, please listen to these principles and practices. The most effective way to help somebody see something like that is not by you telling. As tempting it is to tell, I still struggle with this. And Rachel's always like, I'm like, no, babe, don't say anything. Like, quiet. Is asking questions.
You trying to say I really struggle with this?
You have,
because I like to give the answers.
She loves to give the answers.
I feel like you're asking me too.
In morning devotionals,
I
was like, hey, you guys, what do you think is the outcome of making this decision or this habit? And I'm trying to get the kids to think through it and be like, oh, I don't want to do that. And Rachel's like, I know this one. I got it. I'll tell them, like, babe, stop. We know you know the answers. It's so funny. Yeah, it's totally a mom thing. It's a dad thing too. It's just a parent thing. You're like, no, I know the answer. Let me tell you. But a kid who is told forgets the lesson, or even rejects the lesson, or acts in spite of the lesson. If you say, hey, this is it, and they're like, I'm doing this just to get you, which they don't realize it's in self-sabotage. So as much as you possibly can, resist the temptation to just tell them and learn how to ask really effective questions. So when they're super busy, say, and they'll often, things start to unravel, either emotionally or mentally or spiritually or physically or socially. Things start to unravel. And so you just start, what do you think's going on? And I'm just so busy. Like, okay, are all of these things really serving you?
Well, or it's almost this very basic step-by-step process. So one thing could be, oh, are you super busy? You're asking that basic question because sometimes maybe they haven't even thought about it. Oh yeah, I am. I'm super busy. Well, why are you super busy? Well, I've got all these things. Do you like doing all of these things? Well, I really like this, but I don't really like this. So you're literally walking them through the process of thinking through it and they're helping them do it out loud.
Yep. So at an elementary level, not to treat them like they're ignorant, but you're helping them process and make decisions. And you guys, well, you know this already. There are so many adults who still don't know how to do this. They're not very good at it. Of like taking everything that's happening and just backing up and start asking questions. Like, what's serving me? Is this leading me to where I want to go? Do I even know where I want to go? This is a fundamental principle of this question here. Does your son know where he wants to go?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't even tell you how many people are going down this path. And when you stop them and say, hey, where do you want to go? And I'm like, I want to go over here. I'm like, do you realize you're walking this way and pointing that way? And they're like, wow, no, I never actually realized that. And so you got to walk down that path. Now, some of them have this intuition and they're like, yeah, I want this in my life. This is the kind of person I want to be. So then we help support them in that. And we help them learn how to be more productive, which is kind of another topic we'll get to in a minute here. But you've got to help them start processing. So let's just do it right now for fun. All the things you have going on. Well, yeah, I think you're saying he thinks he does know, right? Yeah, that's teenagers. Like, I got this.
Well,
don't tell me.
But in their
And on the flip side, the things they're willing to give up are not the appropriate things, like you don't give up on your education completely because you found a job you love when you're 16. Like, I'm sorry, you just don't. But if I was to ask him these questions and say, what are you going to take out of your life? English, history, and math, Mom, I hate them. Sure. They're not useful to me at all. And I'm like, yeah, they are. Like, we can change how we do them,
so right
but they're
there,
still
Laura,
useful to you.
That's where exactly right there, that transition, when you say, yeah, they are, that's when it becomes less effective because he's like, whatever, Mom, you're just a teacher. So you think that's right there, that moment where he's like, dude, dump the education stuff. I hate those classes. That's right where you literally bite your tongue, grab your lips if you have to, like hold your mouth shut and just pause. And this is true for all of us, you guys, where you have to stop and say, okay, all right. So if you stay with this job, let's roll out 3 or 5 years and you kind of drop some of the education stuff because you don't like them. Let's play this out, like, and be open and honest. Like, let's just play it out. Like, where does that lead in 3 or 5 years from now? And if they walk through it psychologically, and he gets down 5 years, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, I might be stuck in a low-paying job, right at the point where I want to start a family, and I can't provide very well." Because I didn't get an education. Whoa, man, I better do these things I don't like because I don't want to be stuck in a pit in 5 years from now. But you have to walk them through that scenario.
Right, because in a situation like that, he's already made up his mind at this point. So you, as the parent, telling him the opposite will not convince him to change his mind. The only way that can be changed is, first of all, they have to feel that there's honestly no pressure. Like, okay, great. If you want to be a farmer for the rest of your life, okay, cool. I'm cool with that. That's your choice. And you need to be sincere about that. Maybe that's not what you wanted for your kid. Maybe you wanted them to be a doctor or a lawyer or who knows, whatever. And you don't want them to be a farmer. But ultimately, it is their life. And if you want to have a relationship with them, you have to be okay with the path they choose. And this is true with everything, honestly. Ultimately, you have to be okay with whatever path they choose. So you start there. So they feel like, oh, okay, mom's not going to try and make me follow a certain path.
And the reason you do that is because in that moment, they stop resisting.
Right.
They're
Psychologically,
like, I don't have to be defensive.
Psychologically, there's this rebellion, I don't know, gene or whatever it is. There's this rebellion thing in the brain that when you feel like you're being forced or controlled by someone, it's almost like you can't think for yourself. It's almost like the prefrontal cortex shuts down and you're in reactive mode.
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight.
Yeah.
You're trying to just do the opposite of whatever the person controlling you is telling you to do. This is what happens. So you have to provide a space for your child to be able to think for themselves. And the only way they can have that space is if they actually feel safe and supported in whatever decision they make. Now, you can do this with small children too, on a smaller scale, and then you just keep expanding it as they get older. But if you provide this space for them to make their own decisions, knowing that you're supporting them, first of all, now they can think for themselves. And then they also eventually start looking to you for help and guidance. Oh, okay, I have this space. I know I can make my own decisions. Mom and Dad, what do you think? Right? But that doesn't happen until they have the space around them feeling they have to feel the sense of independence. I am independent. I'm going to make my own decisions. And you're like, yes, you are. Absolutely. You're totally dependent, right? But I'm here to catch you when you mess up. You don't know that, but I'm here providing this safety net for you. So,
and my children would never come to me for advice if I'm constantly giving them advice. Does that make sense? If I'm giving the dad lecture to my sons or my daughters all the time, well, I think you should do this, don't do that, you go here, do this and do that. And I'm kind of all over them. Like, again, a lot of parenting's like that. You look around, most parenting are like, tell you. And so they're like, Dad, I'm not going to ask you any questions, man, because you're just constantly telling me what I should do.
Right. The only time you're telling is when they've actually asked. Yep. So you have to kind of, again, be totally okay with what they're going to choose. Even if you're not totally okay, you have to, like, I don't know how to explain this. It's almost like you divide yourself. You're like, there's this part of me that is absolutely, totally, unconditionally loving and accepting of whatever you decide to do. If you want to stop doing math and English, I will still love you. I will accept you. If you want to be a farmer, I will love and accept that. So there's literally, so I'm not saying fake it. I'm saying you find that place in yourself where you're like, I will love and accept you no matter what choice you make. That's the part you're presenting. That's the space you're providing. Then from that place, you're able to help them ask themselves the right questions so they can come to their own conclusion. So you then say, okay, great. If that's what you want to do, that's awesome. What about long-term plans, family life? Like, what else do you want to do with your life? And does this fit into those long-term plans? And it's a lot of question asking and a lot of listening.
And it's a long process. It's a total
right. This isn't going to happen in one afternoon. This is going to be kind of this ongoing process.
So, and you're saying, yes, you're super against him quitting school. 100%. I am too. Fundamentally, I don't even know him. And I'm like, dude, I'm against him quitting school. But the point is, you have to let him play this out so he realizes it's in his best interest to not quit. But he has to choose that and realize it himself, again, through questioning and mentoring, or even outside mentors. Sometimes he won't listen to parents. That's that independence that kids do. So it's an outside mentor. But it's being super tactful and getting him to this place where he goes, holy crap, quitting school right now would be the worst idea ever. I have a really good friend who lives 12 minutes from you. And he got this job as a senior in high school, loved it, thought it was great, had this girlfriend. They were like, we're going to get married. And then whoops a daisy, she got pregnant with twins. And he's like, shoot. And so he's like, well, I got this job I love. We met him when his twins were turning like 8. and he was still stuck at this job. And like he had capped out at like $17 or $18 an hour. And he's like, I hate this. I hate this. I can't support my family. We can't live the kind of life we want to live because I'm stuck. And I'm stuck because I made decisions as a teenager. Right? I tell my kids that story and other stories like that. And I don't bring it up like when it's in the moment of like, hey,
you're going to end up like him.
Yeah. That story comes up on a random morning devotional. It's like, guys, I was thinking of my buddy the other day, and I just dropped that. And I don't turn and look at the kid and go, none of that business, right? Because they just reject it. I just tell the story, and then like, gosh, man, it makes such a difference. And they're sitting there going, oh, but they're poker face, like I'm not even listening. And they're like, I don't want to be there, right? You're helping them think down the road and telling those stories, because you're right, you don't want them to drop out and quitting. I don't know, but okay, again, the complexity, right? Maybe he wants to quit because there's some other problem. He's at the public school right now. Maybe there's some real trouble there and he's not telling you. I mean, it could be anything. I hear kids talk about the bullying that's going on, or the deep insecurities, or the struggles. I mean, there's every number of issue that's popping up across this whole spectrum.
Poured out of his mind.
Yeah, exactly.
That.
No wonder you're not being stimulated. You're not being challenged. Kids love, even when though they hate it, they love being challenged. Just like we are wired to be challenged and tested and to grow. And if he is literally bored out of his mind, but he loves working with his animals, no wonder he's like, this just makes sense to me.
Right.
I hate this. I love this. I'm out. Right.
Well, and so in that case, one other thing to consider is there another alternative? Can he test out? Can he do some sort of homeschool graduation? Like there's a lot of options now online, even working with the school. So maybe you say to him, okay, let's finish up early. Let's do what you need to do, need to get done to graduate, to do it sooner if you want. So you're done with this sooner than later. That's one option. But going back to this, like, I just really want to emphasize this because I feel it's so important. When you say, this is how it's going to be, that's when they are like, nope, I'm doing this. And I speak from experience because I was that rebellious child. Okay. My dad was like, this is how it's done. And I'm like, no, it's not. I'll show you how it's done. You don't give them space to think for themselves. When you approach it that way, you have to. And so when I'm saying something like being okay with whatever they choose, it's not like you're really okay with them dropping out of school. You're not, but you're okay in a way that you unconditionally love them and will still love them even if they did drop out of school. It's that kind of place you're coming from rather than the, I want what's best for you. I'm going to make sure it happens no matter what. That's not the place where they are receptive to your mentoring, if that makes sense.
That unconditional love does not include unconditional providing. Your kids must be cut off at some point. Just throwing that out there. There might be a few really rare exceptions, but for everybody listening, like the sooner you can get your kids to independence or interdependence, the better.
Which again, this is what is happening in this situation. He
wants his independence.
Getting more independent, and that's a good thing. It's not that that's bad. You want him to be more independent. Now, of course, you don't want him neglecting his education. So maybe this is the major pain point here. So you have to think, and it says right here, you've been looking through different alternatives. Yeah, focus in on that. Have that conversation of, hey, I know you don't like school, but let's talk about what that looks like down the road and if that fits into your vision of your life. And so, yeah. So then
what happens, you guys? I love this whole conversation, and it is so critical for all of us. So I hope you'll do this for yourself and with your spouse and your marriage and with your kids. Lay out options Right. Okay, there you go. So there's a perfect example. And this, we're going to play this out. So you try the online thing and it gets worse. Or you try, well, let's try this, and it doesn't happen. So you lay out the options, and then all of us have to be able to mentally walk down that road 6 months or 12 months or 3 years and play out the scenarios of, okay, so one of my, so I have a masterclass for men, and this community of awesome men. And one of them today said, I'm launching my business on my side hustle. And he's like, this morning, I just woke up and I thought, I'm going to quit my job. Right. So he hasn't even launched his side business yet, but he's like, I think I'm going to quit. Now, that could totally work. That has many times, like, guys just walk away. It's the ready, fire, aim philosophy, right? Like, see ya, I quit. And they go, and then they're like, crap, now what? And like, they have to build their business, and they do it. Our friends from Australia did that. They hated their life. They were both working nonstop, and they never even saw their kids just to survive because it was so expensive where they were living. And they saved up a bunch of money. They both quit their jobs and moved to Costa Rica. They got there and just decompressed, and then they're like, shoot, now what? Like, we'll run out of money in 6 months. What are we going to do? And they built this thriving, awesome business that's still going strong today, right? But then there's other people, they quit their job and then they start working and it doesn't work, and now they're dead broke. So in your son's example, okay, what do you think? You want to try online? Yes, try online. Okay, but wait a minute. What if this doesn't work out? Now you left this and you quit this. Where does that leave you? You're in some trouble. And we need to do that too for ourselves. So you're playing these things out as an adult. And I would love to do it with you guys right now. Let's do it, actually, because we'll walk through it with ourselves, and then you can do this with your kids. So right now, look at all the things you're doing. Are you doing too much? So everybody, you're just gonna do some, just run through your mind here, start scanning. Are you doing too much? Are you doing too little? I love the imagery of pigs at the trough, right? The trough is a 24-hour period, and it can only fit so many pigs at the trough. And if you're going to put one pig in, another one has to come out. And if we sat down and did like a personal coaching session with all of you, I bet we would find some big old fat sow taking up tons of room at the trough. And you're like, that thing's causing problems in your life.
That needs to be bacon.
Yeah. Turn that thing into pork chops and bacon, because it is taking over your life. And it might be sports. It might be social media. It might be work. We often work with guys, like, work starts to take over their life. And it starts to crowd into their health, starts to crowd into their marriage, starts to crowd into their parenting. And you're like, you got to scale that thing back. It could even be fitness.
Cleaning the house.
Like, I'm at the gym 3 hours a day. Yeah. You're like, whoa, we'd rather have you be a parent than have those huge pecs, buddy. Like, whatever it is, or cleaning the house. Like, I'm cleaning all the time.
Because
like, well,
cleaning honestly never stops. You could be cleaning all day long and there'd still be more cleaning to do. So at some point you have to say, I'm not cleaning because I'm doing something else that's more important to me. So anyways, what are you trying to, well, they just sit on each other. Laura says, actually, the pigs, they just sit on each other so they can both reach, right?
That's hilarious. Yeah. Like, we'll pile this up and we'll stack in our lives too. So just everybody, and we can share if you want to, you can share in the chat, or you can jump on the mic. I guess ultimately the big question is, and I love to ask myself this and my clients this, is everything that you have going on in your life right now leading you where you want to go? And you've got to know where you want to go and who you want to become. So you ask these solid questions like, okay, you're chasing this goal, or you're chasing this objective. Is that really who you want to be? Is it bringing you what you want? Is it serving you? And man, it's incredible, you guys, these ahas you have mentally and emotionally, or even spiritually, of like, whoa, I have my ladder against the wrong wall.
Well, not only is it taking you where you want to go now, and where you want to go next year and where you want to go in 10 years from now. So that's part of the challenge. And I think this ties in even with Laura's question with her son. What he's doing in his mind is taking him where he wants to go now, or
Right
else he
now.
wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
He finds meaning and fulfillment in it. And that's great. That really is a great thing. And there's nothing wrong with him pursuing that. But is pursuing that to the neglect of other things going to take him where he wants to go in a year and 5 years and 10 years? Now you're shaking your head. What would he say though, is what I want to know. Does he know where he's wanting to go? And does he know whether or not this will get him there?
And is it possible?
Definitely opposite of what I would say.
Okay.
Which honestly might just be a reaction to what you would say.
Well, it could just be a reaction to what you say, or it could be an incongruence with what he wants versus what you want, which isn't always a bad thing. And this is the hard part about parenting sometimes, because sometimes what he wants may be perfectly fine. You just don't like it. And I'm not saying this is the case. I'm just saying we have to consider that. Maybe what he wants will be fine for his life and what he wants to pursue, but you're not okay with that. Because sometimes when we're dealing with our kids, some of the problems come because they're pursuing things we don't want them to pursue.
I got to tell a story. So we went and met this family, and we were having this conversation about, letting our kids pursue their potential and become their best selves. And the mom said to us, she looked at us and she's like, oh yeah, this is great. My kids can become whatever they want. They can pursue their dreams. They can do anything, but my daughter's going to be a nurse and my son's going to be an engineer. And she said that with like definitive, this is how things are. And I looked over at them and both of them were like, and I saw it right away. And I talked to them afterwards. I'm like, do you want to be a nurse? Do you want to be an engineer? And they're like, no, but that's what mom insists we become. So that's what we're becoming. So all talk was, yeah, my kids can pursue their dreams, do whatever they want. Hey, you'll be a nurse, you'll be an engineer. And they ended up following that path begrudgingly. Yeah, so sad. Because she couldn't see any other option for her son and her daughter. She couldn't see it. And maybe they would have been an amazing artist or teacher or anything else. But there was no alternative because she had decided this is what you'll be. Let me tell another story that I think is applicable here. A good friend of mine, genuinely great guy. And I mean that sincerely. He is an awesome human being. Several years ago, he was a very successful businessman, extremely successful businessman, but he wanted to have wealth, lots of wealth in investments so their family could just have tons of wealth and live the life they wanted. So he worked his full-time job, and sometimes it was a little more than full-time. Then he did real estate investing on the side. So lunchtime, before work, after work, evenings, weekends, he was remodeling homes, buying homes, remodeling homes, building their investment portfolio. Okay. Well, he did it phenomenally well, was able to quit his corporate job, racked up millions of dollars to invest in real estate properties and apartment buildings. And I mean, amazing. But it cost him his marriage because all that time apart just slowly drove this wedge in between him and his wife. And it just grew further and further. And all the while, I mean, he told me all this. He's like, it was like, I was doing this for my family. We were chasing our goals, the things we wanted. But in this case, it cost him his family. So they are just going through this horrible, ugly, miserable divorce right now. And he's able to see his kids half the time. And man, just pain and suffering and darkness and misery in spite of having millions and millions of dollars. So this isn't a simple thing, you guys. It's quite complex. You have to know what you want now, what you want in the future, and neither of those things can compromise what really matters most to you.
Which seems like is Laura's concern here? Because, oh, well, she says he's here, so she has to type. She can't talk. He believes he's preparing for the future, but in many ways, it's leading to the neglect of family, education, and even friends.
Mhm.
Which, I just have to throw this out here because this is how we think. This is how we think in our own life, which may or may not be true.
Might be for a time period.
So essentially what I'm saying in a way is what you just wrote, that may or may not be true. I don't know. Maybe you don't even fully know. Maybe he's the only one that really knows whether or not it is. Because this is the challenge about human beings. And when your children grow up and become more human beings, being they're more independent, they're more conscious, they're more aware, that they start thinking on their own and they start getting a vision of their life. And they might be able to see things that you may not be able to see. Sometimes that's the case. So, yeah.
Sometimes they're completely blind.
Sometimes
and you're like, wake up.
Exactly.
Open your eyes.
Right.
But sometimes you guys allow, I don't know. I think there might be like this
The benefit of the doubt,
a
maybe?
spiritual, I think there can be this spiritual thing, like God in the universe will speak to an individual about the song they were born to sing. And it won't necessarily come to a parent, it comes to the individual. And so we're like, look, son, I always thought you'd be a musician. And he's like, I want to be a mechanic.
Well, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because it very often in the path of pursuit of your dreams, it sometimes involves the neglect of family, education, and friends. Meaning that sometimes when you're pursuing something, other things are neglected for a time. Now, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's not okay. Again, back to this whole complexity of life and everything you're doing. So the challenge is if has one vision that he's pursuing, and again, this is one scenario. The other scenario is he's totally clueless, right? Okay, that's the other scenario.
His brain is not developed yet, and we got to help him make some decisions.
But if
probably a little bit of both, honestly.
Right.
And that's the
honestly,
other thing too.
yeah.
A little bit of both, which is likely, and which is true for all of us. There's some of both going on there. But if you have this passion that you love and you're pursuing it, there are some things that will be neglected sometimes. And only you can really know when the right timing is for that. And when it's now time to stop neglecting and put more attention onto them.
But can I share two stories from our family?
Yes.
So a couple of months ago, a friend reached out. We have for a very long time wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa.
I tried to plan a trip in 2020 and got canceled.
Got canceled because of COVID. we have wanted to get on that mountain. It's been on my bucket list for a long, long time. It's 19,500 feet just by itself over the African savanna. And you can go climb it and then do an African safari, right? And so it's I've wanted to do it for so long. A friend calls up and it's like, hey, we're going. You want to come? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes, I'm in. And I'm like, hey, is there room for my kids? And he's like, yeah, there's room. So I went to my three teens who are 15, 16,
3 of our 14s.
and 18, 3 of the 4. And I said, you guys, and I talked, I think, did I even talk? No, I didn't. I don't even know if I talked to Rachel. I was like, I'm gonna offer. So I went to the kids, but I thought in my head, I'm like, I'm not gonna pay for them. I could, but I'm not going to, because I want them to earn a lot of money. It was $6,000 for everything included. Flight, the safari and the mountain.
It is. It
everything.
hasn't happened yet.
It
It's
is.
in the
Yeah.
future.
And so I thought, what an opportunity to help 3 teenagers earn $6,000 just for a 2 or 3 week trip in Africa. So I went to them. I said, hey guys, I'm opening this up here. We're going for this group and you can come, but you have to pay your own way and you have to train. You have to get in shape to be able to do this. And I said, you have 24 hours to give me a yes or a no. Right. And I did this on purpose. And they're like, oh, I want to go so bad. I'm like, hey, but if you commit, you got to get in phenomenal shape and you have to earn the money.
I think there was 2 of them that said yes immediately.
Well, yeah, they're like, I'm in.
I don't even have to think
I'm
about
like,
it.
well,
Yes.
you don't have the money. He's like, that doesn't matter. I'll get the money. I'll get in shape. I'm in. Right. And so then all 3 of them eventually said yes. So now all 3 of them are working super hard to earn the money to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, like life-changing experience. But right now they're all working so much, they're neglecting their formal education.
Mhm.
They actually, 2 of them have moved out. they're working on farms.
They're in
not with us.
Utah. They're 15 and 16, and they're in Utah with friends and family working.
Working on these farms while we're here in Georgia, right? And so, like, family time's obviously getting neglected. Education, formal education is getting neglected, and these sides, but the growth and the development that's happening, the things they are learning that you couldn't pass on a test, but whoa, the life skills, the discipline, the determination, the just everything they're going to experience, even with some independence from us, is priceless.
Even though we miss them, obviously, because they're gone. And like you said, I made them finish up the curriculum they were on before they left, but for now it's on hold until they get back. So there's a lot of things we are giving up, we are exchanging, but we realize that it's for a good reason. It's for a positive benefit. So bringing this back in, it could be something like this for your son. Maybe he sees something like that you might not see, and he doesn't have the ability to articulate. That could be happening. That's preparing him for something he wants to do in his life, or something he feels called to do in his life. One of the cool things about our son being out there on the farm, it's called Utah Natural Meat. It's in West Jordan. He loves it. He absolutely loves working on a farm, right? He loves driving the tractors, and he drives the dump truck and the semis.
So
and
just so he's been there, they've taught him how to drive a semi truck, a dump truck, and the tractors, and he's operating them all the time.
So he's 16 years old, and he's the one driving the semi trucks and the dump trucks and going to pick up the animals and like all this stuff all by himself, right? He's loving it. Yeah, and so your son loves that too.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a great thing. That's a really good thing. And so many things are being learned. Now, the difference here is that, because obviously you still want your son to have an education, is that you just have to help him get that vision of why he wants an education. Now, based on what you've told me, I understand, because my son is similar to you, your son. He was the son that when he was probably, 13, said, why do I have to do sentence diagramming? And I couldn't give him a good answer. So I just said, you don't have to do sentence diagramming, because I don't know the answer to that. Later, I found a website that he loves. This kid now loves grammar because he uses this website called grammarly.com. So part of it was I just had to find the right tool for him to keep learning. One option in this situation is maybe you just come up with a program for him that he does on his own, that he's self-directed with. He checks in with you, and it's basically, okay, you might not like math, but math is like exercise for your brain. So even if you hate it, if you spend 15 minutes a day and you find an app, this app, we use something called brilliant.org, or there's Khan Academy, or there's IXL. There's so many resources out there. I guarantee there's an app out there that he would like for doing math. And you're telling him, you're just exercising your brain. That's all you're doing. You find something for baby grammar. You find something for reading. Have him listen to audiobooks. Just find a way for him to do education with what he likes to do. That's one approach I've taken with this son specifically.
And he averages about a book a week.
Yeah. Just listening to audiobooks while he works on the farm, or while he does whatever else he's doing.
And he just hit like 600 consecutive days on Duolingo, right? So he's
French.
learning languages and reading books and having all these experiences. So he's still growing and developing in education. Right?
Hopefully that was enough of an answer. We could honestly go on, honestly, but
wait, I want to go back to, and I want even the people watching the recording, I want you to do this. What about you? Is there something in your life that is not giving you the return you need it to? And you've got to walk through this yourself so you can do it with your kids. Is there something taking up time, thought, emotion, energy, resources, space that is not serving you? And I ask, and I want you to share if you don't mind, if you come up with something, you don't have to, but I want you to share and go through the process so that when you walk through the process and you articulate it to your kids and you teach the principle, they see you evaluating your choices and your habits. And maybe the morning devotional is, you guys, you're like, I've been doing this for so long, and I realize it's keeping me from being who I really want to be, or it's preventing me. It's a good thing. It's a super good thing, but it's preventing me from something that I think is even better. And you articulate that and you show that and you model that for your kids. Oh man, that is a grand slam lesson that they kind of tuck away and like, whoa, man, Dad stopped doing something he likes to do because he really wanted to level up over here. Or he stopped doing this thing he loves because he wanted to have more time with us as a family. Do you know what that does? It's incredible. And it might be social media or Pinterest or something on your phone. I don't know. It might be Netflix. And you come to the morning, you go to the breakfast table one morning in your devotional, and you're like, you guys, I love doing this, but it's like I spend 30 or 45 minutes a day doing this thing. It's really not adding value. So I deleted this app from my phone because I want to be here with you guys. Oh. Right. And so we're modeling these principles and constantly reevaluating, like, is it really serving me? And if it's not, to the frying pan that pig goes. Right.
Laura says, I am homeschooling my 3 girls, but he says he wants to finish high school. One thought I have with that is that's great if he wants to finish up high school. One thing we always say is there's never a graduation from education. And so maybe if you help him get this idea of like, okay, even if you finish high school, are you going to stop learning forever? Or are there still things you want to learn? Maybe he just needs to switch his mindset on this towards this. I want to keep learning. I want to learn new things. And he has to figure out what those are, what he would actually get excited about learning. And maybe that's where he's at. Maybe he doesn't have anything that he really wants to learn. And so if you can help him through that process of finding, what is it you want to learn? What is it you're actually excited about? I guarantee you there's something for everyone, right? They're excited about learning a language or excited about learning a certain topic. And so they have audiobooks to listen to. Because even if you finish your high school, you shouldn't be done learning. It's an ongoing process that you'll continue, even if you're a farmer. No matter what you do with your life, you want to keep learning and growing and developing. He loves welding, woodworking, fixing cars, anything with animals. He has tons of interests. He just wants to let go of the basics.
Ooh,
and in your case, the basics is
formal
math,
education.
Formal education. So
let me jump in here as an alternative that all of us need to be aware of in ourselves and in our kids. We often turn to what we could call buffering. right? We buffer, meaning, and buffering is like you do something in order to avoid something else. And we all do it. But sometimes like, man, I really don't like doing that, or I'm uncomfortable with that. So I'll do anything to not have to do that. And so it's possible, I don't know, I have talked to him, right? And it'd be a blast. I love talking to him and working all through this, right? But you get into this, and it's true, again, true with everybody across the board. Are you buffering? Are you trying to avoid this? And so in this case, it might be buffering, like, oh, I don't want to do homeschool, I'd rather finish high school. Well, he's buffering. And then you're like, hey, you got to finish high school. Wow, it's terrible. I'm bored. I hate it. I want to do this online. And he's buffering. And like, well, okay,
So
you
it's
got
an
to finish this thing.
avoidance
He's just avoiding. He just keeps doing, everyone just keep dodging everything to avoid the thing that needs to be addressed. Now, let me drive this home for a second for us. We all do this. And it might be like, there's a problem at work. And you do everything, you work around it, you do this, you're over here. Oh, I'm so busy with my family. I got all this stuff. And you're just avoiding the thing that needs to be addressed. It could be with parenting. It could be with marriage. It could be with health, right? When I coach clients that are struggling with their health, oh man, they are so busy with everything but their health, because they're avoiding
There's
addressing.
no time for grocery shopping
Yeah.
because they're so busy.
I'm so busy. Yeah, that was one that just came up this week. I am so busy, I can only eat fast food. I was like, well, you're going to work yourself to an early grave. And then, yeah, you'll have all the time in eternity, I guess, to think about that. Right. But it's just buffering. It's just avoiding this issue that has to be addressed. So again, it takes some real honesty to look at ourselves and honestly ask, like, am I buffering? Am I avoiding the proverbial elephant or gorilla in the room?
And I'm going to bring this up just because if that's the case, which we don't know for sure, we're just, again, throwing out angles and options. It could be that there's some deeper issue, upstream issue here related to learning in general. Maybe he has some mental blocks about learning that's keeping him from wanting to keep learning, if that makes sense. And so he's trying to, avoid actually doing the learning because he has maybe he feels insecure about it. Maybe he has some learning challenges. So that can be a roadblock if you address that, now it doesn't become an issue, because now he's like, oh, I like learning, so I want to do it. So you're saying he loves learning as long as it's the topics he wants. Okay, well, that's not abnormal, especially for a teenager. That's very normal. In that case, and I do this with my older teens, and I definitely do this with my younger kids. Because learning topics you want that's internal motivation. It's intrinsic. Learning topics you don't want, like say math, you have to find an external motivation for them. So in his case, he just needs an external motivator to do that, along with everything else that we're talking about, because he still needs to get it in his mind. Like, I've had a lot of conversations with my kids about math, because most of my kids don't like learning math. I don't like learning math. This guy likes math. He can do math, okay? So I get it. But I also know it's important to do math because it's exercising your brain, essentially. If nothing else, if you don't master math, great. At least by doing it, you're exercising your brain. So I've been able to have those conversations with my kids of like, you know what? I don't like math either, but guess what? Here's why it's good. And for even a time period, I was doing Khan Academy with them every day, like doing my own Khan Academy as an example, saying, look, I don't like math, but I'm doing math every day because it's a good thing. We need to do math. Now they're to the point where they still don't like it, but they understand why they need to do it. So they do it, and they have an app. They use Brilliant. I think they have an app, or it's just on the web browser, but they do it every day because they understand the principle behind why they're doing it. So really, if that's the major hangup, you have to dig into that. You have to help him say, great, you love learning about these things. These are the topics you love. That's fantastic. Keep learning about those things. Never stop learning about those things. These things, they're not fun. You don't like them. I'm not asking you to do hours and hours and hours of these things every day, but you could do 15 minutes, right? Couldn't you do 15 minutes of math a day? That's all I'm asking to start. Just because it helps your brain, if nothing else. If you want to see the scientific research behind it, great. Let's look it up and let's show you. I'm sure there's a TED Talk that tells you what math does to your brain, right? We'll do that. I'll totally go find TED Talks or whatever to inspire my kids. And here's why you should learn math. So you're just digging into the deeper issue there. And this is true no matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you're talking about math or you're talking about whatever. It's the same thing. You're getting down to the deeper issue. Why is it that you really don't want to do this thing? Let's talk through that. This is a good idea. External motivation and manageable bite-sized pieces.
Yep,
exactly. Sometimes that's the holdup, especially for a teenager. They think you say, do your math, and they think, I have to do 2 hours every day, and they just have this big idea of how horrible it is when you're like, no, 15 minutes, here it is. Here's exactly what you do. It's really easy. Just, that's all you got to do. And then they're like, okay, I can handle that. And now you've removed that roadblock.
Okay. Awesome.
Is that good?
Yep. Awesome takeaways. I want to drive something home though, related, but just for you. Looking at those deeper issues. And I want each of you to consider that carefully yourself in your own life. What is the underlying cause of the underlying problem? And be willing to face that. And this is something we have to continually revisit. But be willing to do it honestly. And it will be uncomfortable. Yeah,
growth is uncomfortable.
like special forces say that I just learned to embrace the suck, right? There's going to be some uncomfortable stuff, but you have to face the deeper issue. Like what's the holdup? What's the hang up? What's causing the problem? Laura, you said maybe you might need to consider quitting your job, even though you love it. That's a hard decision, a complex decision, a big decision. And maybe you don't have to. Maybe you just need to figure out a way to be super productive at work and super productive at home. Maybe there's a hack, but then again, maybe there's not. And you're like, it ultimately comes down to I have to make a decision. So, but all of us have to be willing to face the deeper issues. Because, well, let me ask. What happens in your family, in your life journey, in your marriage, whatever, in your health? What happens if you don't face the deeper issues? Rachel knows the answer again. You always know the answer, babe. You're the best student.
You just totally set me up for that one. I couldn't resist.
I love it. And she always has good answers, doesn't she? Love it.
I'm not answering.
Oh, she's not answering now. I put her on the spot. That was
a joke. I'm not answering.
So here's one comment. You just survive from day to day and you don't have an extraordinary life. Ooh. Isn't that the truth? And the remorse later on from living in survival mode instead of really thriving, man, that's a heavy, heavy price to pay. Oh, yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. The monster grows.
That's right.
It's so true. And so what's a hideous little monster that none of us want to address because that thing is hideous? It hides in the closet and gets huge. And by the time we're forced...
That's not huge. That's like just barely bigger. Huge.
Huge. By the time... Yeah, exactly. It was this big and now it's this big. By the time we get to it, we're forced, at some point, you will be forced to address the monster. And if it has gotten so big, sometimes you can't kill it.
It kills you.
It kills you or some part of your life.
Well, and Laura says, thanks, Amy, for letting the session be about my son. But the reality is, it's not about your son. That's why it's so great. It's about something we're all dealing with, because if essentially your question is, how do I help my son and myself and all of us give up good things in order for the best things? And this is part of the answer. Like, you have to have those hard conversations. You have to make those hard decisions. That's the only way it works. Like you were talking about this, having an extraordinary life, you can only have extraordinary if you give up good things and even better things sometimes. And that's not easy. It's really hard to do. And it's uncomfortable. And sometimes you hurt people's feelings. And
man, so often you have to be totally unconventional. You have to be a nonconformist. The whole crowd's going this way. You're like, see ya, I'm going the other way. And your family or your society or your community or the people you work with are like, what are you doing? You're crazy. You're like, see ya. I'm going to live an extraordinary life. And then you start living life on your terms.
But your terms can only be determined when you actually know what those terms are.
Yep.
When you've actually thought about it and made hard decisions. That's the only way you get it. You have to know what you're after. So
love it. And all of you watching the recording are not off the hook here, people. This is for all of us to really get clear about what the issue is and then address it. Okay, boom, got it. This is good. I love this stuff. And do you ever get nervous? Do you guys ever get nervous when you start thinking about the big things? I know whenever I talk to my clients, they get nervous. They're like, oh man. It's this excited nervousness, right? Of like, oh, like, are we just going to go for it? We're going to just go big or take the risk, make the big change, and jump into this amazing adventure of being the hero of your own story. And it's awesome. And it's worth it. It's worth the challenges. It's worth the struggles. It's worth the work to live life on your own terms and write your own ticket. It's amazing. Okay. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching the recording. Go after it. Live that extraordinary life.
Thank you.
Do awesome things. Yep. See you guys. Thanks.